The New York studio of The View hummed with sharp tension, its bright lights casting harsh shadows on the packed audience. Whoopi Goldberg sat at the center of the panel, her eyes narrow, her hands clenched, her voice low but ready to strike. Across from her, Karoline Leavitt, the young White House press secretary, took her seat, her face calm, her smile cold. The crowd buzzed, sensing a fight. Their cheers split between Goldberg's loyal fans and Leavitt's supporters. The host introduced the segment, her voice tight. "Today we've got Karoline Leavitt, and things might get heated," she said, her eyes darting to Goldberg. Leavitt spoke first, her words clear and biting, aimed at the panel. "I'm here to talk truth," she said, her eyes on Goldberg. "Not the drama this show churns out daily." The crowd gasped, some laughing, others hissing, her jab a spark in dry grass. Goldberg's face hardened, her voice sharp. "Drama?" she said, leaning forward. "You're the one spinning lies. For the White House, Karoline. Don't come here acting high and mighty." The audience roared, the air pulsing with rage, Leavitt's calm smile only fueling Goldberg's fire. Goldberg's words cut deeper, her voice rising, her eyes fierce. "You owe your job to the fights we won," she said, her hands slamming the table. "You called out wokeness, but without it, you'd be nowhere. Show some respect." The crowd cheered, some clapping, others jeering, her anger a wave crashing over Leavitt. Leavitt's eyes gleamed, her voice steady, ruthless. "Respect?" she said, her smile sharp. "I respect truth, Whoopi, not loud rants from a show that's all noise, no facts." The room shook, the clash a storm breaking loose. In the control room, producers watched, their faces tense, the live feed spiking with viewers. Clips of the debate were already online, Leavitt's roast and Goldberg's fury trending fast. A producer whispered, "This is gold, but it's dangerous." Goldberg's team backstage clenched their fists, knowing her temper could burn the showdown. Leavitt's aide, watching from the wings, nodded, her voice low. "Karoline's got her," she said. "She's ready to gut her." The debate was no longer a segment. It was a war, and the nation was glued to every word. Leavitt leaned back, her voice clear, her words a blade. "You're mad, Whoopi, because I'm calling out your game," she said, her eyes locked on Goldberg. "This show's a circus, and you're the loudest clown." The crowd gasped, then erupted, some laughing, others booing, her roast a brutal hit. Goldberg's face reddened, her voice a growl. "Clown?" she said, her eyes blazing. "I'm a voice for millions, and you're just a mouthpiece for lies. Keep talking, and I'll bury you." The tension snapped, the stage a battlefield, their hate a living force. The studio lights burned hotter, the audience's screams a relentless drumbeat, the debate spiraling into chaos. Goldberg's co-hosts tried to jump in, their voices drowned by the crowd. But Leavitt and Goldberg were locked in, their eyes fierce, their words venom. The host raised her hands, her voice sharp. "We're just getting started," she shouted. But the clash was already out of control, clips spreading like sparks, the nation watching as Goldberg's fury met Leavitt's ruthless wit in a fight with no end but destruction. The New York studio of The View pulsed with raw hate. Whoopi Goldberg's furious growl, "I'll bury you," still ringing as she glared at Karoline Leavitt. The audience's roars were a chaotic storm, split between Goldberg's fierce fans and Leavitt's defiant supporters. Goldberg leaned forward, her eyes blazing, her hands gripping the table ready to tear into the press secretary. Leavitt sat cool, her smile sharp, her voice steady, her roast of Goldberg as a clown, fueling the fire. The host tried to steer, her voice tense. "Let's keep it civil," she shouted, but the crowd's screams drowned her, the stage a pit of rage. Goldberg struck hard, her voice clear and brutal, her words a hammer. "You're a liar, Karoline," she said, her eyes locked on Leavitt. "You stand there, spinning tales for the White House, while I fight for real people. You're nothing but a puppet. The crowd erupted, some chanting her name, others jeering, her attack a spark in their anger. She slammed a hand on the table, her voice rising. You mocked my show, my voice? I've earned this seat, and you'll never touch that. The room shook, Leavitt's calm face twitching under the blow. Leavitt's eyes gleamed, her voice sharp, her words a blade slicing back. Earned it? She said, leaning forward. You're coasting on old fights, Whoopi, yelling loud to hide your empty words. I'm here for truth, not your tired act. The crowd gasped, some laughing, others booing, her roast a cruel jab. Leavitt held up a note, a Goldberg quote praising wokeness she'd spun as weak. This is your fight? She said, her smile cold. It's a joke, and so are you. The audience roared, the divide a jagged wound, Goldberg's fury boiling over. Backstage, Goldberg's team watched, their faces tight, the live feed spiking with viewers. Clips of Leavitt's roast and Goldberg's rage were everywhere. The debate a national fire. An aide whispered, Whoopi's losing it. She needs to hit back smart. Her manager nodded, her voice fierce. She's got this, she said. Karoline's digging her own hole. They prepared a counter, digging up Leavitt's briefing lies, ready to feed Goldberg ammo. Leavitt's aide in the wings smirked, her voice low. She's done, she said, watching Goldberg's anger consume her. Goldberg's voice rose, her eyes fierce, her words a torrent of hate. A joke? She shouted, pointing at Leavitt. I've faced bigger bullies than you, and I'm still here. You're a kid playing tough, lying for a paycheck. The crowd cheered, some standing, her attack a wave crashing over Leavitt. She pulled a phone, showing a clip of Leavitt dodging a press question. Her lie exposed. This is your truth? Goldberg said, her voice sharp. You're the joke, Karoline, and I'm ending you. The room rocked, Leavitt's smile faltering, her armor cracking. The studio's air grew thick, the audience's screams a relentless pulse, news screens flashing the clash across the nation. Leavitt's hands tightened, her voice a hiss, her eyes burning. You're desperate, Whoopi, she said, her words venom. Keep yelling and I'll show the world your lies. But Goldberg's glare was ice, her voice steady, her fight a storm that wouldn't break. She'd turned Leavitt's roast into fuel, her rage a weapon, and the nation watched, waiting for her next blow to shatter the press secretary's world. The New York studio of The View thrummed with bitter rage, Whoopi Goldberg's searing attack. You're the joke, Karoline, still scorching the air as she faced Karoline Leavitt. The audience's roars were a jagged clash, some chanting Goldberg's name, others jeering for Leavitt, their divide fueling the chaos. Goldberg sat rigid, her eyes fierce, her phone still raised with the clip of Leavitt's exposed lie, a weapon that had cracked the press secretary's calm. Leavitt leaned forward, her face tight, her voice sharp, her cold smile a thin mask over her anger. The host raised her hands, her voice strained. We're on fire here, she shouted, but the crowd's screams swallowed her, the stage a raw wound. Leavitt struck back, her words clear and vicious, her eyes locked on Goldberg. You're clinging to old glory, Whoopi, she said, her voice a blade. That clip's nothing, just noise from a has-been desperate for relevance. The crowd gasped, some laughing, others booing, her jab a cruel spike. She waved her note, a twisted Goldberg quote praising wokeness as weak leadership. This is your legacy? Leavitt said, her smile sharp. A tired rant, and I'm here to shut it down. The room rocked, Goldberg's face reddening, her fury a storm ready to break. Goldberg's voice boomed, her eyes blazing, her words a hammer smashing through Leavitt's taunt. Shut me down? She shouted, her hands slamming the table. I'm a voice for millions, Karoline, while you're a puppet spitting lies for power. The crowd erupted, some standing, their cheers a wave of anger. She held up her phone, again playing another clip. Leavitt dodging a scandal question, her words unraveling. "This is your shutdown?" Goldberg said, her voice fierce. "You're crumbling, and I'm the one breaking you." The audience roared, Leavitt's smile fading, her control slipping. In the control room, producers scrambled, their screens flashing the debate's soaring ratings. Clips of Goldberg's fury and Leavitt's roasts were dominating news. The clash, a national obsession. A producer whispered, "This is too hot. They're tearing each other apart." Goldberg's team, backstage, watched with clenched fists, their aide holding a new file. Leavitt's briefing contradictions, ready to fuel Goldberg's fire. Leavitt's aide, in the wings, gripped her phone, her voice tense. "Karoline's holding," she said, but doubt crept in. Goldberg's relentless assault hitting harder than expected. Leavitt's hands shook, her voice a hiss, her eyes burning with defiance. "You're breaking nothing, Whoopi," she said, her words venom. "You're loud, but empty, and I've got the facts to prove it." She pulled another note. A distorted Goldberg comment spun as anti-American. The crowd gasped, some cheering, others jeering, her attack a desperate claw. But Goldberg's glare was iron, her voice steady, her fight unyielding. "Facts?" she said, her eyes fierce. "You're drowning in lies, Karoline, and I'm dragging you under." The room pulsed, her words a tide, Leavitt's armor cracking further. The studio's lights glared, the audience's screams a relentless beat. Newsrooms across the country broadcasting the war live. Goldberg leaned closer, her voice low, lethal, her eyes locked on Leavitt. "You mocked me, but I'm your end," she said, her words a vow. Leavitt's face twitched, her breath short. Goldberg's fire a force she couldn't escape. The nation watched, the tension a jagged edge, waiting for Goldberg's next strike to shatter Leavitt's fading defiance. The New York studio of The View crackled with venom. Whoopi Goldberg's lethal vow, "I'm your end," hanging like a storm cloud over Karoline Leavitt. The audience's roars were a relentless tide, some chanting for Goldberg, others shouting for Leavitt, their split fueling a bitter clash. Goldberg sat forward, her eyes fierce, her phone still glowing with clips of Leavitt's exposed lies, each one a dagger in the press secretary's armor. Leavitt gripped her notes, her face pale, her voice sharp but strained, her cold smile gone. The host tried to intervene, her voice shaky. "Let's take a breath," she shouted. But the crowd's screams buried her, the stage a jagged scar of hate. Goldberg's voice roared, clear and brutal, her words a sledgehammer. "You're done, Karoline," she said, her eyes boring into Leavitt. "You called me empty, but you're the one with no truth, just lies for a paycheck." The crowd erupted, some waving signs, their cheers a thunderclap. She played a new clip, Leavitt fumbling a press question, her contradiction glaring. "This is your strength?" Goldberg said, her voice fierce. "You're weak, and I'm tearing you apart." The room shook, Leavitt's hands trembling, her defiance crumbling under Goldberg's fire. Leavitt lunged forward, her voice a desperate hiss, her eyes wild with rage. "Tear me apart?" she spat, her notes shaking. "You're a relic, Whoopi, yelling to stay relevant. I've got your words, proving you're the liar." She waved a twisted Goldberg quote, spun as "dividing America." The crowd gasped, some cheering, others booing, her attack a frail claw. But the cheers for Goldberg were louder, her clip a stronger blow. Leavitt's voice cracked, her words venom. "You're nothing, just a loudmouth who'll fade." The room pulsed, her desperation clear, Goldberg's fire burning hotter. Backstage, Goldberg's team watched, their eyes fierce, the live feed spiking with millions tuning in. An aide held a new file, Leavitt's latest briefing, dodging a policy failure ripe for attack. "Give it to Whoopi," the manager said, her voice sharp. "She'll bury her." Leavitt's aide in the wings clutched her phone, her face tense, watching clips of Goldberg's relentless assault trend nationwide. "Karoline's slipping," she whispered, her voice tight. "She needs a miracle." But Goldberg's fury was a tidal wave, and Leavitt was drowning. Goldberg leaned closer, her voice low, savage, her eyes locked on Leavitt. "Fade," she said, her words a blade. "I'm eternal, Karoline, and you're a flicker about to die. Your lies are exposed. Your job's a joke." She held up the new file, Leavitt's briefing failure glaring, and the crowd roared, some weeping, others screaming, her evidence a final spike. "You mocked me," Goldberg said, her voice fierce. "Now you're nothing, and I'm the one, ending you." The studio rocked, Leavitt's face a ruin, her last stand shattered. The studio's air grew heavy, the audience's screams a relentless drum, news screens blazing with the debate's chaos. Leavitt's eyes darted, her breath short, her voice a broken gasp. "You'll regret this, Whoopi," she whispered, her words a dying spark. But Goldberg's glare was steel, her voice steady, her fight a storm that wouldn't yield. "Regret?" she said, her eyes cold. "You're already gone." The nation watched, the tension a razor's edge, waiting for Goldberg's final blow to crush Leavitt's fading light. The New York studio of The View seethed with raw venom, Whoopi Goldberg's final strike. "You're already gone," a death knell echoing over Karoline Leavitt. The audience's roars were a chaotic tempest, some chanting Goldberg's name, others jeering for Leavitt, their divide a bleeding rift. Goldberg sat tall, her eyes blazing, her file of Leavitt's exposed lies, briefing failures, dodged scandals, open like a loaded weapon. Leavitt slumped, her face ashen, her hands trembling, her notes scattered, her once sharp smile a ghost. The host stood, her voice cracking. "This is unreal," she shouted, but the crowd's screams swallowed her, the stage a raw chasm of hate. Goldberg's voice thundered, clear and merciless, her words a battering ram. "You're finished, Karoline," she said, her eyes piercing Leavitt's. "You called me a relic, but you're the one fading, a liar exposed by your own words." She held up the file, Leavitt's latest briefing contradiction glaring, and slammed it down. "This is your truth?" she roared, her voice fierce. "A weak lie, and I've crushed it." The crowd erupted, some leaping to their feet, their cheers a tidal wave, Leavitt's eyes wide, her defiance shattered by Goldberg's relentless assault. Leavitt's voice broke, a ragged gasp, her eyes wild with desperate rage. "Crushed me," she hissed, leaning forward, her hands shaking. "You're a fraud, Whoopi, hiding behind your show, your fans." She clutched a crumpled note, a last twisted Goldberg quote spun as hateful. "This is you," she shouted, her voice cracking. "A divider, and I'll prove it." The crowd gasped, some cheering, others booing, but her attack was frail, drowned by Goldberg's fire. The audience's roars for Goldberg buried her, Leavitt's final claw a dying spark. In the control room, producers watched, their screens flashing the debate's apocalyptic ratings. Clips of Goldberg's takedown and Leavitt's collapse dominated. News? The clash, a national inferno. A producer whispered, "Whoopi's won. Karoline's done." Goldberg's team backstage pumped their fists, their aide holding more evidence. Leavitt's old press lies, ready if needed. Leavitt's aide, in the wings, sank into a chair, her face pale, watching Goldberg's triumph spread. "She's gone," she muttered, her voice hollow. Leavitt's career a ruin under Goldberg's fury. Goldberg leaned closer, her voice low, savage, her eyes locked on Leavitt's trembling form. "A divider?" she said, her words a razor. "I'm a voice, Karoline, for those you've lied to, and you're just ash." She waved the file, her evidence a beacon, and the crowd roared, some weeping, others screaming, her victory a storm. "You mocked me," she said, her voice fierce. "Now you're nothing, and I've ended you." Leavitt's face collapsed, her breath a sob, Goldberg's relentless fire a force she couldn't escape, her name a curse. The studio's lights, dimmed, the audience's screams a relentless echo. Newsrooms broadcasting Goldberg's triumph live. Leavitt sat frozen, her eyes hollow, her voice gone. Goldberg's voice. "You're nothing." A relentless haunt. Goldberg stood, her glare cold, her fight eternal, and stormed off the stage, her file a smoking gun. The crowd's cheers followed her, a requiem for Leavitt's career, as the cameras cut, leaving Leavitt alone, broken in the ashes of Goldberg's ruthless victory, her regret a shadow that would never fade.